Washington Journal continues.
And let me introduce you to Congressman Dennis Cardoza, a Democrat of California. Let me tell you a few things about him very quickly. He's in his 5th term in the House of Representatives. He is part of the Blue Dog Coalition, which saw its ranks greatly thinned in the last election. His district in California, the 18th, is going to be greatly restructured after the census. And he's just recently announced that he's leaving Congress at the end of this term. You've told other people, but tell our audience why you've decided to do that.
Well, there's a number of things. First of all, I've come to be sort of frustrated with screaming and yelling in Congress rather than the cooperation and getting things done. And that's a frustration that's built over the years. I believe in the last election, the American people were looking for moderation in Congress, and ironically, they threw most of the moderates out. 68 of my colleagues lost in the House in the last election. So I decided that because I think it's going to be tough to get things done for the next couple of years, I was going to work on that in the private sector to try and accomplish those same goals. Some of it is personal and family kinds of issues. Then finally, you mentioned the redistricting. They put my seat in with one of my good friends, Congressman Costa. We both voted for each other for Speaker in the last time we had the opportunity to do that. So Jim wanted to stay in Congress. I was in the position of my life where I was sort of ready to do something else, try something else, and I decided I would be the one that would bow out.
I heard you tell Chuck Todd the same thing you just said, which is that you want to continue to work on issues, particularly housing, that matter to you. Okay. How can you do that effectively without that vote?
Well, you know, I find in some ways that the vote and having to be compelled to go to the floor every single day, spend a lot of time doing other things that other people want you to do rather than what you're focused on, takes time away from the thing that you care about the most. My people have been devastated by the foreclosure crisis, and we are very committed. I am very committed. My wife is very committed to try and see if we can't get that word out that more needs to be done in that area.
In fact, we pulled some statistics from Realty Track that looks at the highest foreclosure rates among states in the 3rd quarter. And if you see this list of 1 to 10, 3 of the towns, the cities that Congressman Cardoza represents, Stockton, Modesto, Merced, all ranked in the top 6 of foreclosures in the United States. What's it going to take to help people who are so far underwater in your region?
Well, I think it's going to take a lot more focus by the Obama administration on this problem. The proposal that came forward this week does almost nothing to increase the number of people that would qualify for government assistance. And I believe it just shouldn't be the people who are not paying their mortgage that receives a workout, but I think all Americans who have a home right now should be able to refinance at the current rates. I put a bill in 2009 to do that. It's called the Home Act, and it would facilitate refinances across the board. The people that are in trouble, but their neighbors who have paid consistently as well. Everybody should be treated the same. The bill has been scored as the equivalent of an $85 billion tax cut stimulus to the national economy without really costing the taxpayers a whole lot. On the bad loans, we own the vast majority of them, or we own a good portion of the vast majority
Those are ones financed through Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac?
Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, or that Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac own the bonds that secure private label as well. Then you add in the vet loans and some of the other loans and some of the other guarantees that have been put in place over the years. And we have a stake in about 75% is what I'm told of the loans in America. So having known that we already have the liability, let's try and figure out how to restructure them, extend the term. Instead of a 30-year mortgage, maybe make it a 40-year mortgage, reduce the interest payment from 7% to 4%, which is today's rates, give a break to the borrowers, but make them pay the principal. I believe in, you know, there's a lot of my colleagues that think principal reduction and cram down are the most important things. I think that has some other problems that come with it, moral hazard and some other things. What I'd like to do is get Americans who want to pay their mortgage, who want to do the right thing, to be able to achieve their goal, keep their family in their house, be responsible taxpayers and homeowners, pay their mortgage off, pay their commitments down, just let's give them a little assistance to do it.
Is there anything right now preventing the commercial banks from doing this kind of restructuring?
Yeah, they want to make money. One of the mortgage banker lobbyists ran into me in the hallway the other day, and they told me that they wanted to see my bill go away because they felt that they had made a business calculation that they could lose more in foreclosures. People could actually be thrown out of their house rather than reducing the interest rate. They made more money by keeping the interest rates high and losing a few mortgages than they told me they had no place else where they could put their money, the money we give them, at 0.25% or less interest rate. There was no place that they could invest that and get a higher rate than those high-end mortgages at 7 and 8%.
But what about the number of foreclosed properties that the banks now own and are unable to liquidate?
Well, I spoke with Ed DeMarco yesterday from FHFA. He is the person in charge of trying to liquidate a lot of these mortgages. He says that they're going to try and start moving 200 to 400,000 of the mortgages or the foreclosures that they hold in the next few months, and they're coming forward with a plan to do that.
But that's, again, the federal,
That's
Fannie
right.
Mae and Freddie Mac. So if you go back to the commercial banks, you talked about them taking the risk of foreclosure. But if these properties come onto the market and they can't move them, they've got liabilities, assets on their books that they can't move, that they're...
Well, and they're afraid to have to declare them, I'm afraid. There's a lot of games being played by the big banks in this area, and I think the president's got to get tough with them. Mr. Geithner's got to move on this topic, and it's time to get some action done.
We'd like to welcome your telephone calls. And I might mention that Congressman mentioned Edward DeMarco, who is the acting director of the Federal Housing Finance Agency. It regulates Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. He is our guest on our Newsmakers Q&A program with reporters this Sunday morning. It will air at 10 o'clock Eastern Time. So we invite you to hear more of his perspectives on Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac and their roles in the housing crisis and what relief he sees might be possible. Boynton Beach, Florida. First up for Congressman Cardoza. He's a Republican named Vaughn. You are on, Vaughn. Go ahead, please.
Yes. Just wanted to see what has been his interaction with Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, because really I worked with them, and I think they're getting a lot of false blame in this. And I find that we have not systematically enforced the desktop underwriting agreements that we have with the banks. And no one has gone after the banks to say, hey, you are supposed to check every loan you sold to those particular entities. And now that they sold those loans, no one is going back on the clawback clause in the DUS agreements, and the federal government, both the overseer and also Treasury, is preventing Fannie and Freddie from taking all those loans and selling them back to the bank at 100% on the dollar, which means taxpayers get back their money, plus the fees that they were supposed to pay under the desktop underwriting agreements for not doing their fiduciary duties to check the loans. Congress put that in so they could facilitate a smooth market for the banks, and the banks had a fiduciary responsibility. They never removed the down payments or anything that everyone's accusing them of, and the banks did that and said that these loans were good and sold them to Fannie and Freddie. So why aren't we getting our money back at 100% on the dollar per the agreements? That's the main question I have out there.
Thanks, Vaughn.
Well, Vaughn, you've brought up a lot of good points. I will tell you that with regard to the refinancings to date, I believe the Fannie and Freddie programs, the HAMP and HARP programs, have been much too complex. They've been much too slow to get the regulations out. My office gets hundreds of people that have a very difficult time working through the process. Now, Mr. DeMarco told us yesterday, a group of about 20 members of Congress that have gotten together 2 or 3 times now to meet with him, that he is actively